Thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Just like the House of Reps, the Senate has shown overwhelming support for President Bola Tinubu's proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State, invoking its constitutional powers under the 1999 Constitution as amended. The approval grants President Bola Tinubu the authority to enforce emergency measures while mandating a review of the situation at any time, but no later than 6 months. Other things the National Assembly did today was imposing a joint committee of both chambers to oversee the administration of affairs in Rivers State during the emergency period. Additionally, the Senate has resolved to establish a mediation committee consisting of eminent Nigerians to help resolve the state's political crisis. Let's listen to the lawmakers.
The House of Representatives is unusually full and legislative business began earlier than normal on this day. A national issue is on the front burner and every member wants to be counted. Minutes after the leadership arrived, the Speaker reads Mr. President's letter formally informing the House of the proclamation of a state of emergency in Rivers State.
I hereby forward the consideration of the House of Representatives copies of the official Gazette of the State of Emergency Proclamation 2025.
An executive session was held for about 10 minutes before the lawmakers returned to business of the day. House Leader Julius Ihovere is pushing the position of the executive on the state of emergency and seeks members' support.
This House has been summoned to leave an indelible mark on the pages of Nigeria's political history.
Members make their interventions, some opposing Mr. President's action, while others insist it is long overdue. They raise some constitutional issues, leading to amendments of Mr. President's letter.
Mr. Speaker, can that be made available now for the members to know whether we have formed a quorum?
A committee of eminent Nigerians be set up to mediate, to ensure that there is peace in Rivers State.
The issue we are debating right now in second reading is a constitutional matter. And Constitution has prescribed what to do.
Listen to Mr. President's proclamation, where he said that the sole administrator will be reporting to the Federal Executive Council. I disagree, with that position.
Also of concern to the lawmakers is the need for Mr. President to review the 6 months declared for a state of emergency as soon as peace is attained between the executive and the legislature in Rivers State. Today's resolution by the House of Representatives has given a bite to President Bola Tinubu's action on the way out of the leadership crisis rocking Rivers State. Lawmakers are in agreement that the solution must be found to restore sanity, orderliness and peace to the South State. Joke Adisa, TVC News, Abuja.
In a related development, the South-South Governors Forum has said that the political situation in Rivers State did not deteriorate to a point where it required an emergency rule, considering the provisions of Section 305 of the Nigerian Constitution. The chairperson of the forum, Diri, who is also the governor of Bayelsa State, said the section stipulated that such a declaration should be considered under specific conditions such as war, external aggression, and imminent invasion. Apart from Governor Basio II of Cross River and Governor Monday Okpebholo of Edo State, who are APC members, all the other governors in the South-South, including Mr. Diri, are PDP members. And as of yesterday, all eyes were on both the green and red chambers. It wasn't clear if the president's proclamation would garner the needed votes to stand. The ruling APC only has a total of 155 out of a total of 360 seats in the House of Reps. It's needed at least 240 votes to pass the proclamation. In the Senate, where the APC had 60 members, at least 72 members must vote in support for the proclamation to succeed. And looks like all the lawmakers were in support of that proclamation. Now, let's have this conversation. The proclamation with the verdict of the Supreme Court on the crisis in Rivers State. What is the impact on the judiciary? Can the judiciary function effectively and efficiently without the two arms of government? Why do Rivers people have to suffer because of this continuous trend in the political settings in Rivers State? And what impact will this have on the political future of the state? Our guests tonight are Umar Aminu Kalgo, a lawyer, former NBA Secretary, Benin-Kebbi Branch, and Dr. Femi Adekombi, who is a political affairs analyst. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics Tonight.
My pleasure to be here.
All right. Mr. Kalgo, let me start with you. And I'm starting from your constituency, and that's the NBA. The president of the association, Afamosigwe, SAN, on behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association, has faulted this declaration of a state of emergency in the state, describing the move as unconstitutional and a dangerous precedent for Nigeria's democracy. Last night, I had two lawyers on the program. One was a former NBA spokesperson at Per Branch. Both of them were on the same page. They thought the president's decision was backed by the Constitution. My first question to you would be, considering how divided legal luminaries are on this matter, is the Constitution really ambiguous?
The Constitution is not ambiguous. You see, the law is that there are certain things when you come to apply the law. The law, you know, is just simple principles. And at times when you want to apply them, they apply to factual circumstances. So the disagreement that you see between the legal luminaries has to do with factual issues. Some are of the opinion that what is on ground constitutes a ground for declaring state of emergency, while some differ to that. The position of NBA, I have read it. They are not, NBA has come unequivocally to say that the fact on ground does not necessitate the issue of imposing a state of emergency. But in my humble view, what can constitute state of emergency are many. And I believe there is a section that can give sufficient leverage for the government to take such a stand. What I mean is particularly section 305 sub 3D, because most of what people are saying that there is no war, internal aggression, or the disruption of peace. But this particular subsection is talking about where extraordinary measures have to be taken to avert a danger that can lead to public breakdown of public order or public safety. So this is in fear of such things. So my humble opinion is that if you look at the judgment of the Supreme Court, which has clearly said that the federal government should not henceforth give the allocation, state allocation to River State due to the fact that they do not have an appropriation bill. Equally, there are no elected local government officials. So it leaves the state without a lifeline of what it is needed. And due to the political rivalry, the political class, the executive and the legislature were not able to manage and put the interests of people first and get a workable, appropriation bill and a calendar for election, and they continue with their rivalry. So this discussion we are having now, I think will not be different. The choices for the federal government are not that many. It's either they hold on this allocation for that state, which I believe will definitely lead to breakdown of peace and also public safety. I think why the greater people who support it have seen this, though the federal government did not make a good case while selling it to the people to understand that this is the fear that is there. Because if now for 2-3 months the allocation has not been given to that state, I think the federal government will be in a quagmire greater than what we are in today.
And as at yesterday, Mr. Kalgo, Nigerians were focused on the National Assembly. The conversation was about what today's plenary was going to look like. Surprisingly or not, the National Assembly showed overwhelming support for Mr. President and his decision. Does that surprise you in any way?
Well, it's not the state of emergency after the proclamation of the president, raised a great apprehension, which everyone knows that the National Assembly have just 2 days to either okay it or think otherwise. And hopefully, well, the National Assembly, to me, is a political decision. And I know that they can take a position on their own. But hopefully, I think the federal government was able to carry them along, because not long ago we have seen where as the executive have has leverage on the National Assembly, but all the same did not get its way, but have to broker concerning the issue of the revenue, the tax bills. So I think this is a political issue with the federal government, if one should say have been successfully executed.
But let me also ask you this, just for the sake of those of us who are not lawyers. If lawyers were expected to help us interpret the law are this divided, are this confused, what then do you expect of ordinary citizens? But talking about reactions, there are those who are totally in support of this. There are those who have said this should have happened. But there is the third group who are in support of this decision by Mr. President, but felt it was too hasty. They felt it's a hasty decision, and the president should have allowed for more consultation and perhaps explored more options. Did you think it was a hasty decision?
To me, it's not a hasty decision. And what I want to say is breaking it down to the ordinary people will not be different, because after all, the law and everything is there is about what is going to happen on the ground. Now, a state where there is the necessary condition of having an appropriation bill, that is budget, which must be there before a penny of government can be spent for running all the issue of welfare, health, and everything is not done, and that allocation will not be paid to that state, even all the local government in River State. I think this is a dire situation. That is what we have on one side, if this thing is left to continue like that. And the other one is now we have a state of emergency, and the federal government, with the backing of the National Assembly, is in control, meaning their allocation is secured now. Under this, the federal government can give them, and the state can be brought back to pace. The political leaders, the governors and the legislatures were not removed permanently. It's just to get the things in order so that they will come and continue. So I think it is easy to break it down, even people who are not lawyers. The concern here is the interpretation of the factual situation. Does such a situation warrant? So people are divided on that. I think the great misconception is others are just seeing it from the other conditions, because the conditions are numerous. In a state of war or external aggression, yes, those ones are not what the federal government now, not on those grounds that it proclaimed this, rather, but for an imminent danger that is foreseeable that may bring public disorder and public safety. So I think people can have their opinion, whatever way it goes, definitely.
Right. And you know, Mr. Kalgo, our conversation over the past few months has been about nation building, the role of the judiciary, the role of the legislature, and the role of the executive. And that's why it's sad that River State's people are going through what they're going through at the moment. But critically looking at this, is this a win-win situation for both parties? You know, I've heard some known figures say this is good for Mr. Fubara. The president just saved him from impeachment. Is it likely that the voice of reasoning prevails now?
I think whatever is good for River State should be good for the governor Fubara and also the legislature. To me, I think it's a win-win situation even for the warring factions, because they fail. That is a failure to put the interest of the electorate to allow them have a functional government. But the issue of impeachment whatever, I think that rivalry will continue, but politicians can always fall allegiances at any time.
Why do you think this rivalry would continue?
Definitely is the role of engagement of politicians, as you know. The leverage of loyalty and they are partisan. When they are partisan, this is something that is built on, I can say, constitution is a constitutional bias that is allowed, that you form bias towards your party members and what have you, as a means to access power. And it's a means to an end, not an end in itself. What happened in Rivers State is the politicians forgot what is the end in itself in Rivers State. That is the issue of having a better government for the electorate. They were so consumed in the means. So, and that means they will continue to, it's continuous process as far as the politicians are concerned.
I know you're not a security expert, but let me take you up on the security implication of what happened a day before the president declared a state of emergency in Rivers State. Rivers State for close to 2 years has, been in this political turmoil, which has degenerated into that explosion, the explosion of the Trans-Niger pipeline at Gokana local government area. And this happened amid recent threats by militant groups to attack oil installations in response to the federal government's withholding of Rivers State allocation due to this ongoing political crisis. And what we know for now is that police have arrested 2 persons in connection with that incident. I want you to speak to the security implication of blowing up oil installations.
Blowing up oil installations are detrimental to the country. And this is also, it adds up to what I'm trying to show, that once we continue on the trajectory that I talked about before, arising from the judgment of the Supreme Court, we are bound to find things like that. When a state knows that no more allocation is coming to it, and there are groups formally that have agitations, it's very easy, it's volatile. They can be, irked to partake in some of these things. But the deterioration of the security, I think that's what many people now consider to even gauge whether that incident is an enough security threat to, proclaim state of emergency. So I saw it from the larger picture. When you take it as an incident, it may not add up to that. But look at the situation, the prevailing situation, that when you don't have a workable government, no means, no IGR, no what, definitely, it's a volatile situation where disruption will come. So many people now regarded that maybe the federal government is taking that incident alone to capitalize as a destabilizing security situation to impose the state of emergency. And that's why many people are saying it does not add enough to what is there directly in the Constitution. I think that's what...
Mr. Kalgo, I brought that question because last December, the president had pledged to raise Nigeria's crude oil production from less than 1.5 million barrels per day to above 2 million barrels per day in 2025. But with situations like this, reportedly there were 2 different explosions in a day. What are the consequences of these on a thriving or struggling economy like ours?
The mainstay in Nigeria, we know, is the crude oil, and is the mainstay of for the country. So when the federal government is even trying to boost and let us reach the appropriate barrels that we are capable of producing and have the quota with OPEC trying to meet up, you see, we are already falling below our potentials. So anything that will disrupt our potential is not a good thing to happen. I just want to say that the issue of security, when we raise it, the federal government has the power over the security operatives in the country. But I know there are a lot of things that were done, ingenuity, to ensure that our pipelines are secured, where even some of the locals there are put in charge so that they help the federal government oversee those things. So with a situation, a political situation like that, those allegiances may be disrupted. All I want to say is, provided that the political elites, the executive, or were not found to be, mingling into such issues, you see, no one can blame them for that precisely. But all the same, it's not a good thing for Nigeria. And I believe with the current situation, a lot of education need to go into rivers. That what is happening is not taken into the partisan politics, but to get the state back into normalcy, to have it running as other sister states are running in the country.
But I want to also speak to, the role of the administrator who has now promised to prioritize development and unity during his tenure. I want you to speak to the regulatory powers of the sole administrator, because according to the president, such regulations may be considered and approved by the Federal Executive Council and promulgated by the president for the states.
You see, in law, it is understandable that there is an interpretation which is called the mischief interpretation. So what need to be looked, what is the mischief, what is the minus, what is the ills that necessitate having an administrator? That's what, when we have the administrator, will hopefully help him to fix. And I think one of those priorities is having an appropriation bill. Though there is no full mechanism of National Assembly, House of Assembly and what, but this is state of emergency. And state of emergency entails a situation, extraordinary situation, where extraordinary measures can be taken to fix what had fallen and not been fixed. Also, I think the other thing is to get the state back on track, the issue of local government election must come to play, because as it stands now, they are not going to get their allocation by the judgment of the Supreme Court. No elected. So anything that needs to be done is these two things. And if, looking in retrospect, if after that judgment, the governor and the House of Assembly were able to achieve this, we will not find ourselves in this situation.
All right. But, the National Assembly has shown support. Yes, the National Assembly has shown support, but not without a shouting match. Does this look like a procedural challenge for the National Assembly?
Definitely no, at all. Since if it had been, the story now as we are speaking would have been different. As I said, that has to do with politicking, lobbying, and all that can take place legally between the members. And it was a resounding passage of the resolution as we saw. So the challenge is not much, though as a healthy democracy, a lot of people who have different opinions were heard and they raised their opinions. But as always, the majority carries the day.
But again, how does this action, align with the principles of federalism and separation of powers in Nigeria? Could this lead to similar actions in other states where there are political disagreements?
To me, I don't see it happening easily, because when we consider this issue and just call it political crisis, and saying political crisis meaning an political rivalry, partisan rivalry that has reached highest levels, I think the situation in Rivers is beyond that. Once you consider the Supreme Court judgment, it has now transcended beyond just political crisis. When you have a judgment of the Supreme Court preventing them from having the allocations in order to force them to what? To fall in line to the democratic principles of having an appropriation bill that was passed democratically and to have democratically elected leaders. So whatever we talk about democracy, the elected officials of Rivers State have not done justice to democracy, and they have thrown it to the dungeon. That's why the Supreme Court judgment is so harsh. So I don't conceive such recurring incidences in or in any other state in Nigeria, because just ordinary political rivalry cannot transcend into a level that we have in Rivers State. My hope is that this should be a simple incident for the country to learn from.
So, Mr. Kalgo, earlier you sounded very pessimistic about whether or not this action is capable of dousing tension in Rivers State. And that's why I'm going to ask you this question. What do you say about those who invariably led us to this point? Those who would continue to fan the emblem of chaos for their personal gain or whatever? And I put my question that way because of how disappointed the president sounded when he addressed Nigerians. He says, and I quote, "Unjustifiable reasons demolished the House of Assembly of the state as far back as 15th or 13th of December 2023, and as up until now, 14 months after not rebuilt same, have made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of the crisis, but my efforts have been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis." These were the words of Mr. President. Even after the Supreme Court, how else did you think Mr. Fubara could have gone or salvaged the situation?
The situation to me is not a one-sided. It has to be both. Both have to concede to a level. It's a give and take, because with the level they have reached, there must be a give and take before we can have a workable democracy in Rivers State. I think the effect is that the lesson is not learned just by the nation, by people of Rivers State and the principal actors themselves, because it is an issue of ego. No one backed down, no one is willing to back down. But I think this state of emergency, whether you accept it or not, has backed them down. I think it's a moment for reflection for both.
I mean, for the purpose of, younger politicians who may be watching or trying to, examine this situation that has happened for future references, what was expected of the governor as at the point the explosions happened in Rivers State? Was there enough time for him to have dissociated himself and condemned that act?
To me, the issue of that bombing, as far as people will want to ascribe it to the governor, I don't take it to be a so huge an impact or reason to consider. I'm sorry to say that, because you can see I consistently lay my reason for the ground to impose state of emergency. But I know he is the chief of security in his state. But that position is, when you look at it, a little bit a nominal position, because the army, the police, all the security apparatus in Nigeria are directly under the federal government. So saying that he should come, and that's a political situation. Naturally, as a person, he's supposed to address the state about it. But that address is a nominal issue to do and expected of him. And with the situation in the state, maybe he is feeling offended or what. But when you go to the root of the issue of security, it's a concern for him, but a more concern to the federal government. Sorry to say.
But let's go back to the sole administrator. What do you know of him, about him, and what exactly are the tasks ahead of him?
Sincerely, I don't know much about him as a person, but I believe him being nominated is not out of vacuum. Definitely background checks and all the necessary things have been done for him to emerge. And the task ahead of him is just, as I reiterated, to get the state back on course. Now, since an extraordinary situation has warranted his coming, let us have a workable line to harness the monthly allocation for the states, and to work in order to have a calendar for election. And this will bring him close to working with even the political parties and actors that are there already. So I think apart from these stringent legal issues that have come down, also politically and social issues too. He have to show also a prowess in dealing with the politicians in order to have at least elected local governments, chairman for the state, so that the real reason for having, the allocation flowing would be there. But before the 6 months, maybe the electoral office, the normal government can come and continue to thrive with the, institutions already established.
All right. Mr. Kalgo, let's get more legal perspectives to this issue. And I want us to consider the proclamation with the verdict of the Supreme Court on the crisis in River State. What is the impact on the judiciary? Can the judiciary function effectively without the other two arms of government?
The judiciary is indispensable, that it must be there, whether in an ideal situation or even in a situation that is not ideal. Society cannot thrive without the judiciary. So I would say the judiciary would be there to do what it could do in the situation. When you, understandably, even when you have military takeover, you have coup d'etat, you see, the judiciary must be there because disputes must be settled, and society cannot exist without the judiciary. So now the political system of the executive and legislature is what the elected officers are not there anymore. But that said, the administrator will have the civil service and the bureaucratic heads to work with. And with that, I think to a greater extent, the judiciary will be able to work in a normal way, though the ideal situation would have been where you have the elected officials in position.
All right. Mr. Kalgo, I crave your indulgence to kindly hold as we take a break to bring you a broadcast delivered by the sole administrator of River State, retired Air Vice Marshal Ibokete Ibas. Take a look at this, everyone.
My dear citizens of River State, it is with humility and a sense of responsibility that I address you today, following my appointment as Administrator of River State by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. For decades, I have dedicated my life to the service of our great nation. First, as a member of our armed forces, where I had the honor and privilege of serving as the 20th Indigenous Chief of the Naval Staff, and more recently, as Nigeria's High Commissioner to the Republic of Ghana. After what I believed to be my final retirement from public service, duty has once again called. I have answered not for personal ambition, but out of an abiding commitment to the peace, stability, and prosperity of Nigeria as a whole, and more specifically, River State. My appointment comes at a difficult and consequential moment in history. The political impasse of nearly 2 years in River State has paralyzed governance, desecrated democratic institutions, threatened security, and undermined the economic and social fabric of the state. It has deepened divisions among the people and cast a shadow of uncertainty over the future. These are realities we cannot afford to ignore. As a son of the Niger Delta, I'm one of you, and I recognize the weight of this moment, the expectations of the people, and the challenges that lie ahead. I ask for your understanding and cooperation. Above all, I ask for your faith in the possibility of a better future, one built on peace, stability, and shared progress. I want to thank Mr. President for most sincerely for the confidence reposed in me and for entrusting my humble self with this delicate national assignment. Worthy of thanks are the leadership and members of the 10th National Assembly who have graciously approved Mr. President's state of emergency proclamation for Rivers State. The approval gives full effect for my appointment as administrator of Rivers State. I will draw on my training, knowledge, experience, and dedication to ensure that the essence of this historic decision is achieved. I will have to work closely with the National Assembly under the guidance of Mr. President. Consequently, I hope to continue to count on their support and cooperation throughout this assignment. While abiding faith in God, together we will overcome these challenges. Together we will restore the dignity and the greatness of the Garden City, Rivers State. May God help us in this onerous task. May God bless Rivers State, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
All right, retired Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas there delivering a broadcast to Nigerians, talking about himself and his promise to the people of Rivers State. Mr. Kalgo, let's go on with this conversation. We just listened to the sole administrator. How do you assess this speech?
The speech, considering the situation which brought it, you can feel is sober and at the same time very inspiring with what the administrator have laid down, the challenges and his intention to extend hands and seek the cooperation of the people so that the state will be brought to normalcy. We hope that the interface, as he began, would be very much because once there is interface with the people, I think whatever he aims at doing will be more, easier achieved. And also extending hands to all the adverse parties already, I think is a great thing to do, to enable them know that this measure is not partial. It's just there to ensure that the democratic institutions are right in place for them to have a thriving democracy with all the separation of power principle and everything intact as envisaged by our constitution. So I would say it is inspiring, though it comes in a sober situation.
But as a historian, Mr. Kalgo, how do you compare this declaration to others made in the past by former Nigerian leaders? Any similarity, any difference?
I think there is a lot of difference because the body of knowledge acquired from the last state of emergency that was done during, if I recall correctly, during the Obasanjo regime and now are very different because this time you can see the constitutional aspects are being adhered to by the executive because as it stands, the law, all the requirements have been fulfilled. The only issue anyone could have will have to go to the court to sort same out. But I could remember when the first one was done by the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, a lot of issues sprang up because it is the first time it comes up and a lot of leading to some of pronouncement and what have you that will show that the adequate and proper stipulations not adhered to as one would have expected. So I think it's an advancement, and normally these things do not come easily. They are just principles there that only in extraordinary circumstances they will be brought to bear. So I think...
Well, many political analysts say this will alter the political situation in Rivers State. How do you think this will shape the political future of the state?
I take this thing in good faith, and I have reasons to take it in good faith because what we have before is a stagnation. And with that stagnation, there's no feature of going forward. The only promise before was a promise to adversity, a promise to danger. So when we have an intervening situation to bring normalcy, I think it's good that we take it in good faith, and we advise the administrator to adhere to being apolitical and to do justice between the warring parties. I think that will bring the confidence needed for a greater and stronger River States after all is done and said.
You know, it may sound rhetorical if I ask, if this is good for the people of River States, but in what ways do you think this trend has significantly impacted critical developments in that state and overall impact on governance? And I ask this question because considering that River States is the base of the country's oil and gas industry with its inherent wide scope for wider economic prospects and the rest of the country, it should be at par with Lagos, but reverse is the case.
Yes. Well, as we said that it has been a stagnation when you find politicians being consumed by their internal partisan politics to the extent that the state is brought to standstill. So I think what at this moment we need to do is for us to be optimistic in the future, having such an intervention from the federal government. Really, River State is a state that the country cannot take because of the enormous installations of oil and gas and its position as the leading states in the Niger Delta, which is the home base for the petroleum industry in the country. So I think having a proper government in place will help us rebound that state to its future.
But overall, Mr. Kalgo, what kind of solution can bring peace to River State?
I think we already have one, God willing.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. It's always a pleasure having you on Politics Tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Umar Aminu Kalgo, a lawyer and former NBA Secretary, Benin Kebbi Branch. Thank you so much for your insight on the program.
Thank you, Jumoke. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News.